Redstone was a hard town, baking under a sun that seemed to have no mercy. Life was simple. Work, drink, and try to stay out of trouble. But for Eli, trouble seemed to find him. He was the stable boy, a skinny kid with a stutter that made folks impatient. "GG, get on WW with it, boy," they'd yell when he tried to ask a question. Eli shoveled dung, watered horses, and took the occasional punch from a drunk cowboy. He kept his head down, dreaming of a day when things might be different. He wasn't respected, not one bit. Folks saw him as simple and nobody. The dust of Redstone clung to him like a second skin, a constant reminder of his place. He yearned for something more, but he didn't know what or how to get it. He just knew he was tired of being kicked around. The sun beat down mercilessly, turning the stable into an oven. Eli was mucking out a stall when Big Joe sauntered in, a mean glint in his eye. Joe was a regular at the saloon and enjoyed making Eli's life miserable. "Hey, Stuttermouth," he sneered, "you call that clean?" Eli flinched, trying to avoid eye contact. "I, Jim, GG getting to it. Mr. J. Joe," he stammered. Joe grabbed Eli by the collar, yanking him forward. "Maybe you need a little encouragement." He shoved Eli against the wall, his fist connecting with Eli's jaw. Pain exploded in Eli's head. He crumpled to the ground, tasting blood. "Learn some respect, boy," Joe spat, wiping his knuckles. "And clean this damn stall right." Joe swaggered away, leaving Eli bruised and humiliated in the dirt. The beating was worse than usual, a stark reminder of his powerlessness. Tears welled in Eli's eyes, a mix of pain and anger. Later that day, still sore and aching, Eli was tasked with cleaning out the tack room. A mangled mess, it was usually reserved for the worst offenders of Redstone's rough justice. Flies buzzed lazily around a dark stain on the floor. "D-damn," Eli muttered, gingerly stepping inside. He found a body slumped against the far wall, a notorious outlaw named Snake Eye Johnson. Johnson was barely alive, a bullet wound staining his shirt crimson. As Eli cautiously approached, Johnson rasped, a letter's saddlebag hidden. He coughed, a bloody froth escaping his lips. "Use them, our revenge." With a final shudder, Snake Eye Johnson was dead. Confused and scared, Eli searched the saddlebag hidden beneath Johnson. Inside, he found a stack of letters, each sealed with wax. They felt heavy, important. What secrets did these letters hold? And what did Johnson mean by revenge? A strange feeling, a mixture of fear and excitement, stirred within Eli. Back in his small, dusty room above the stables, Eli carefully opened one of the letters. The wax seal broke with a soft snap. The letter was addressed to Mayor Thompson, and the words inside were shocking. It spoke of a land deal, a secret agreement, and a large sum of money exchanged under the cover of darkness. Eli's eyes widened. This wasn't just gossip. This was something that could ruin a man. He opened another letter, this one addressed to the saloon owner, Maggie. It detailed a past she'd clearly tried to bury, a shameful secret that could destroy her reputation. Each letter was a loaded gun, pointed at the heart of Redstone's most powerful figures. Eli realized the potential he held. These letters weren't just paper. They were a glimmer of hope, a chance to change everything. He could finally escape the dung and the beatings. He just had to be smart about it. The next morning, Eli approached Maggie at the saloon. He waited nervously until she was alone, wiping down the bar. "Emma Maggie," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "See, can I tea-talk to YU?" Maggie, a tough woman with a sharp tongue, raised an eyebrow. "What is it, Eli? And make it quick." He took a deep breath. I found something about why your P passed." He pulled a slightly crumpled copy of the letter from his pocket, keeping the original hidden. Maggie's eyes narrowed, her face hardening. "What do you want, boy?" Eli swallowed, his heart pounding. I just want our respect. And maybe a be better J job." Maggie stared at him for a long moment, assessing him. A flicker of fear crossed her face, quickly masked by a shrewd look. "All right, Eli," she said slowly. "Maybe we can come to an arrangement." True to her word, Maggie gave Eli a new job, cleaning glasses and sweeping floors inside the saloon. It wasn't much, but it was a step up from the stables. He wore a clean apron, and for the first time, people addressed him by his name, not just, "Hey, boy." More importantly, Big Joe didn't lay a hand on him. Maggie made it clear that Eli was under her protection. He observed the comings and goings of the saloon, the hushed conversations in the corners, the deals made over whiskey. He started to understand how Redstone really worked, the intricate web of favors and secrets that held the town together. He watched Maggie, learning from her sharp wit and ruthless business sense. He was no longer just shoveling dung. He was learning the game, and he was starting to play it. Eli noticed the sheriff, a burly man named Brady, frequently visited the saloon. He always seemed to be short on cash, often borrowing from Maggie. Eli also knew Brady had a weakness for gambling and a secret family hidden in a neighboring town. He held a letter detailing Brady's financial troubles and his double life. One evening, Eli accidentally spilled a drink on Brady, ensuring the letter peeked out from his pocket. Later that week, Brady started being a lot more lenient towards Maggie and the saloon's activities. Eli had made his first calculated move. He learned that small favors, subtly coerced, could yield significant returns. The sheriff, the supposed law of Redstone, was now dancing to Eli's tune, even if he didn't know it. Eli felt a surge of power, a taste of what was to come. Eli started to meticulously plan his moves. He was like a spider, carefully weaving a web of deceit around Redstone. He targeted the shopkeeper, Mr. Abernathy, who was secretly cheating his customers. A quiet word, a subtle threat, and Abernathy started giving Maggie better prices on supplies. Then there was Mrs. Gable, the seemingly pious church lady, who had a secret gambling addiction. Eli used that to his advantage, getting her to spread rumors that benefited Maggie and the saloon. He was no longer the stuttering stable boy. He was a puppeteer, pulling the strings of Redstone from the shadows. He learned to control his stutter, using it to his advantage, making people underestimate him. With each successful manipulation, his confidence grew and his ambition soared. He was climbing the ladder one secret at a time. As Eli's influence grew, Maggie started to rely on him more and more. He wasn't just sweeping floors anymore. He was her advisor, her confidant. He even started handling some of the saloon's finances, keeping the books, and making sure no one was cheating them. He also had dirt on Deputy Clem, a lazy and corrupt officer who was easily swayed with a few dollars and the promise of keeping his own secrets safe. With Clem in his pocket, Eli could control the flow of information in Redstone. He knew who was coming and going, who was causing trouble, and who was ripe for exploitation. His power was subtle, but undeniable. He was no longer just climbing the ranks. He was building his own ladder, one secret, one favor, one carefully placed lie at a time. He was becoming a force to be reckoned with. Eli knew that Sheriff Brady was a liability. He was unpredictable, and his gambling debts were piling up. Plus, Brady was getting suspicious, starting to ask too many questions about Eli's past. So, Eli decided it was time for Brady to go. He leaked information about Brady's secret family to a rival newspaper in a nearby town. The story exploded, ruining Brady's reputation. Then, Eli used Deputy Clem to plant evidence that linked Brady to a recent stagecoach robbery. It was a setup, but it was enough. Brady was arrested, stripped of his badge, and run out of town. Redstone was without a sheriff, and Eli had created the opening he needed. He had removed the biggest obstacle in his path. The sheriff's fall was swift and brutal, and Eli was just getting started. With Brady gone, Eli turned his attention to Maggie. He knew her secret, and he knew she was getting old, tired of running the saloon. He approached her with an offer she couldn't refuse. He would take over the saloon, handling all the day-to-day operations, and give her a comfortable retirement in a quiet coastal town. He sweetened the deal by hinting that if she didn't agree, her secret might just find its way into the wrong hands. Maggie, seeing the writing on the wall, reluctantly agreed. Eli took over the saloon, renaming it the Redstone, and transforming it into his base of operations. He used the saloon to gather information, make deals, and control the flow of liquor and gambling in Redstone. He had finally achieved a position of real power. He was no longer just a puppet. He was pulling the strings, and the saloon was his stage. Eli's next target was Mr. Henderson, the owner of the Redstone Bank. Henderson was a respected figure in town, but Eli knew he had a gambling problem bigger than Brady's ever was. Eli also possessed a letter detailing some shady investments Henderson had made, investments that could land him in jail. He used this leverage to slowly bleed Henderson dry, forcing him to make increasingly risky loans to Eli's associates, loans that were guaranteed to fail. Then, when Henderson was at his most vulnerable, Eli offered him a way out, sell him the bank for a fraction of its worth and disappear. Henderson, desperate and fearing exposure, agreed. Eli now controlled the finances of Redstone. Every business, every loan, every transaction went through him. He had consolidated his power. He was no longer just running the saloon. He was running the town. The bank was the final piece of the puzzle. Redstone had changed. It was still a hard town, but now it was Eli's town. He appointed a new sheriff, a man completely loyal to him. He controlled the businesses, the law, and the money. People whispered his name with a mix of fear and respect. Big Joe, who used to beat him, now bowed his head when Eli passed. Eli had become the ruthless king of Redstone. He held court in the saloon, sipping whiskey and making decisions that affected everyone in town. No one dared to cross him. He had transformed himself from a mistreated stable boy into the most powerful man in the territory. But as he looked around at his kingdom, a flicker of something unfamiliar crossed his face. Was this what he really wanted? Had the price of power been too high? That night, Eli found himself alone in his lavish office above the saloon, a far cry from the dusty stable where he used to sleep. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, barely recognizing the cold, calculating man staring back. Where was the kind, humble boy who had once dreamed of simple things? He saw only a ruthless ruler, a king built on lies and deceit. He thought of Maggie, now living in a small cottage by the sea, but forever haunted by her past. He thought of Brady, disgraced and ruined. He thought of all the people he had manipulated, all the lives he had touched with his darkness. A wave of guilt washed over him. Had he become the very thing he hated? The stutter returned, a nervous tick that reminded him of his former self, a self that was slowly fading away. What have I done? He whispered to the empty room. The next day, a stranger rode into Redstone. A woman, tall and weathered, with eyes that seemed to see right through you. Her name was Sarah, and she claimed to be Snake-Eye Johnson's sister. She was looking for answers about his death. Eli watched her from the shadows of the saloon, a knot forming in his stomach. Sarah was asking questions, digging into things that were best left buried. She spoke with the stable hands, with Deputy Clem, even with Big Joe. It was only a matter of time before she pieced everything together. Eli knew he had to act. Sarah posed a threat to his entire empire, a reminder of the past he had tried so hard to bury. But there was something about her, a quiet strength, that made him hesitate. Was she just seeking justice for her brother, or did she have something else in mind? Either way, Eli knew his carefully constructed world was about to be shaken. Eli knew he had a choice to make. He could try to reason with Sarah, to buy her off, but he doubted she would be swayed by money or threats. The other option was to silence her permanently. He could have Deputy Clem arrange an accident, making her disappear just like her brother. The thought sickened him. It was a step too far, even for him. But he looked around at his kingdom, at the power he had amassed, and he knew he couldn't risk losing it all. He had come too far, sacrificed too much. He called for Clem. "Take care of the W woman," he stammered, the stutter now a constant companion. "Make sure it doesn't cause any more trouble." He didn't say the words explicitly, but Clem understood. Eli had just condemned an innocent woman to death to protect his own power. A final piece of his morality shattered. But Clem underestimated Sarah. She was smarter and tougher than he anticipated. She saw through his clumsy attempt at an accident and turned the tables on him, exposing his corruption and his involvement in Brady's framing to the town. Suddenly, Redstone turned against Eli. The people he had manipulated, the ones he had controlled, were now baying for his blood. They felt betrayed, used. Big Joe, eager to redeem himself, led the charge. Sarah confronted Eli in the saloon, the very place where he had built his empire. She didn't want money or power. She wanted justice for her brother. A gunfight erupted. The saloon was filled with gunfire and the screams of terrified patrons. It was a bloody showdown, a battle for the soul of Redstone. Eli was fighting for his survival, his kingdom crumbling around him. In the end, Eli stood victorious, but the saloon was a wreck, and the floor was littered with bodies. Big Joe lay dead, along with several others who had once been his allies. Sarah was gone, vanished in the chaos, leaving Eli wondering if she was truly defeated. He had survived, but at what cost? He was even more isolated than before, his reputation irrevocably tarnished. The townspeople eyed him with fear and resentment. He had proven his ruthlessness, solidifying his position as the king of Redstone, but he had lost any chance of redemption. The victory felt hollow, bitter. He was alone, surrounded by the wreckage of his ambition. He had won the battle, but lost the war for his soul. From now on, he'd be even more hardened and suspicious. Eli surveyed Redstone from his rebuilt office above the saloon. The town was quieter, subdued. People still followed his orders, but there was a coldness in their eyes, a distance he couldn't bridge. He was the undisputed king, but his kingdom felt like a prison. He had achieved everything he had ever wanted, yet he was deeply unhappy. The stuttering stable boy was gone, replaced by a man hardened by secrets and violence. He had climbed to the top, but the view wasn't what he had imagined. The weight of his decisions pressed down on him, a constant reminder of the innocent boy he had left behind. He was forever changed, forever marked by the choices he had made. He was the king of Redstone, but he was also a prisoner of his own making. He tried to give an order to his new deputy, a young man eager to please. "Make sure the T-Town is PP patrolled," he began, but the words caught in his throat, a jumbled mess of sounds. The stutter, which he had almost completely suppressed, had returned with a vengeance. The deputy looked at him, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Eli struggled to regain control, but the words refused to come. It was as if the stutter was a physical manifestation of his guilt, a constant reminder of the boy he had abandoned. He clenched his fist, fighting against the rising tide of shame and regret. The stutter was a brand, a mark of his past, a part of him he could never truly escape. It was the stable boy's revenge. He knew then that this was his life now. A king, yes, but a king forever haunted. As Eli watched the sun set over Redstone, casting long shadows across the town, he couldn't shake the feeling that his reign was far from secure. Sarah was still out there, and he knew she wouldn't give up easily. The townspeople, though subdued, harbored resentment and whispered behind his back. He had built his kingdom on secrets and lies, and he knew that such foundations were inherently unstable. Any day, someone could rise up to challenge him, someone with nothing to lose. The stutter, a constant reminder of his past, served as a warning. Power was fleeting, and the boy they kicked around could easily become the man they overthrew. Eli's future was uncertain, a dark and ominous path stretching before him. The story of Redstone and its ruthless king was far from over. It was only just beginning.